Welcome to the Bold Balkan Women series of the Balkan Forum podcast. With my guest, Azra Berbić, we will speak about dealing with the past and ensuring how this crucial work can be done while being respectful towards victims' memories while influencing a healing process. Azra is a human rights, environmental, and peace-building activist working all around Bosnia and Herzegovina. She's also a lawyer and a journalist. Azra, welcome to the Balkan Forum podcast and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
When addressing dealing with the past, particularly in the context in Bosnia and Herzegovina, how do you view the role played by activists and civil society in healing the communities affected and bringing justice?
Well, for decades now, the role has been sort of shifted, even not only as that activist and civil society sector has the role of civil society sector. We almost always and really often take a role of the state, of government institution, which is not good, but it is what it is. So when it comes to reconciliation and memorialization, a lot of great things in this process, good positive things happened, mostly thanks to the efforts and the work that the civil society sector put in and activists put in. That, again, of course, doesn't mean that the government institutions have done nothing, but unfortunately, since they are heavily controlled by political leaders and political parties, and since when it comes to Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is an especially tricky situation because it's always through this ethnic lens, which is the case all around the Western Balkans, but for Bosnia it is especially specific. So really often it is controlled by the interests of parties and political ideologies, which is for them, unfortunately, focusing on nationalistic rhetorics and ethnic hate, and that's their way, at least how I perceive, to control the masses. And it's really easy to re-trigger people and re-traumatize them. And that's the best way for them, obviously, to control the masses all around the region. So the role, it is extremely influential and big and crucial, but however, again, I believe it's not enough. It's shown that it's not enough because we also, as a civil society sector and as an activist, are human beings. We also have people among us who are not doing all of this for all the right reasons, same like as in politics. And I believe we need to take also our part of a guilt because we partially are, at least that's how I perceive it in the last few years. We are also set to live in this sort of a bubble, which is our safe space. We control the narrative, our narratives. We have a safe space of media that we collaborate with. We have safe space of young people that we collaborate with as well. So really often you can see 200 to 400 max young people all around the region going to all of these events when it comes to, reconciliation, peace building trust, working regional cooperation, interethnic dialogue, and we see all the same people. So I believe that's the biggest threat that we have, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we don't, my perception is that we don't get through the masses. And if we look back at, especially since the invasion on Ukraine, since the war started, we see the rise of these extremely right-wing ideologies, and that's especially visible among the youth. That's something that really worries me. So although it is, again, to conclude, extremely important, it is crucial to have a civil society to take a role in these processes. Also, we need to hold accountable ourselves for our, I wouldn't say wrongdoings, but maybe wrong step or wrong calculations in order to correct ourselves.
Through your work as an activist, you are also involved in the commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide, which holds an immense emotional weight. Could you share your approach to ensuring that these commemorations pay respectful tribute to the victims' memories, but also contribute positively to the healing and understanding process?
Yeah, so I was not directly, as an activist, that's for me, that's a part of living. It's not a job, it's not a role. So I was never directly involved in commemoration process when it comes to organizing it. That's something that is really formal, and it's led by Mothers of Srebrenica and partially also by the board, of course, organizational board and Srebrenica Memorial Center. As I perceive as Srebrenica Memorial Center one of the most important institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and a part of their program and how they are also commemorating is not only on the 11th of July, they are also having many events before and after. And through that process, actually, I was involved for several years. I was, of course, participating in different ways, but most substantial and most important that I see is this Srebrenica Youth School that is organized by in cooperation with Post-Conflict Research Center from Sarajevo and Srebrenica Memorial Center, also with a lot of their other partners. So that's usually a 7-day long event where young people are from all around the region and all around the world. They come to Srebrenica Memorial Center. They are there for 7 days, like in Podrinje area, and they get to know people who work at Srebrenica Memorial Center. Mind you, most of them are survivors or are children of survivors, which is amazing. So they get to know what's the work of Srebrenica Memorial Center. They meet Mothers of Srebrenica. They also participate in commemoration that take place. So in whole, I believe it's not only important to have commemoration like it's such, but also all of these other events that surround the commemoration, because commemoration is just one day, and unfortunately I perceive it all around the region, as Bosnia and Herzegovina especially, we always put a focus on this one day, which is of course extremely important. But what's my experience is that on that day, only survivors and victims need to be center of the attention and need to have all of the attention. So that's why, although I'm not from that area, I was not born and raised there. So, but I do empathize with people, and I want to emphasize always that the main role is the victims and survivors. And luckily, especially in past few years, that's been the case. And I believe that's the best way, because people, even the ones who deny genocide, who denied war crimes, the easiest way to empathize with people and to understand is when you hear the stories from the mouth of people who survived it, or the people who lost their family members, who are still searching for their remains. So I would be extremely happy if that would be the case with all of the commemoration. I would feel happy, even though it is important to have politicians, because that's also sort of a statement that comes from a government institutions. I believe that families and survivors needs to fully took a role of fully controlling and having all the space when it comes to and formal part of commemoration, which is for our cases also broadcasted on the national television. I hope we will have that day sometime soon, because that should be a lesson for all of us, but especially for those political leaders who come there on these places of commemoration, just to listen and learn from these people in order to not allow to these horrendous crimes happen ever again. On the other side, I also participate partially in a commemoration when it comes to Prijedor. We have this initiative Because I Care, Jer me se tiče, which is sort of alternative commemoration. So I work with Center for Youth Kvart, and we also work on non-institutional but alternative commemoration for the victims, and especially when it comes to Prijedor, there is this case of 102 killed children during the beginning of the war in the 90s. So we are requesting for many years. Well, the initiative is actually requesting the monument for the children to be built in Prijedor. And we find many obstacles, but what we make sure with, but on each 31st of May, only people from Prijedor, survivors and victims are speaking, and focus is always on them, and we ask the media to put focus on them. And we really, even though it's sometimes extremely challenging, we do not allow any politicians, even though they come to join the commemoration, we do not allow them to have, to take away a public space and a space on that day. And I believe that's a great example of showing the people how these events should be commemorated, because again, it's about the victims, it's about the survivors and people who are still finding the remains of their loved ones, which both in case of Srebrenica and in case of Podrinje is still the case. There are still around 1,000 people missing. So those are all family members of these people. So yeah, to conclude, again, victims and survivors in center, because again, I believe that's the only way, because always these people share the messages of reconciliation and of peace. They never call for, revenge. They always wish for these things, these events never happen to anyone else. And they always call for peace. They, of course, call out the nationalists, as they should. And they warn when the events, extremist events happens, they warn how dangerous that is. So I believe all of them should have a central role, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but all around the region.
Let's talk a little about confronting genocide denial. What are some of the challenges that you encounter in this endeavor, confronting genocide denial, and how do you navigate them while promoting truth and justice?
The challenges, especially when it comes to Srebrenica genocide, but also when it comes to White Armband Day, which is like a start of commemoration in Prijedor. Those are, I would say, two of the main, we cannot, well, let's say events, they are not events, but two main points on which these extreme nationalistic politics and narratives are framing denial around. And let's be clear and honest, all of this denialism that we face, and we see the rise of denialism, especially when it comes to social media and web, all around the region, and especially among young people, as I mentioned before, and unfortunately, especially among those who don't even remember war, but what it is extremely scary, the ones who do remember, who do know the facts. So it is extremely challenging to fight against it, especially when it comes to, if you do a retrospective, when it comes to Serbian regime, we do see that's controlled by regime. It's not solely by political regime, but also by the media they control, by the academic community even they control. So it's, let's say, multi-layered knit of denialism that comes from Serbia, but also from Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. So it is extremely challenging to fight it when it comes from the system, and when it's been consistent for decades now. So it is challenging. The biggest challenge I see is it within educational system when it comes to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Unfortunately, young people learn from 3 different curriculums, which is already an issue. And of course, a lot of misinformation and false information are spread through formal educational system. So just starting with that's an issue. And that's all around the region. That's not only the case with Bosnia and Herzegovina. And on top of that, we have the media that is heavily controlled by politicians. We have then political leaders who use this language, which is extremely hateful, and they also tend to deny war crimes and genocide and White Armband Day. And on top of that, even the credible media, the people in media who do their job really good, actually fell in this trap of over and over and over again asking these political leaders what they think, let's say, about Srebrenica genocide. So how I, from my personal perspective, is find out that's the best to fight it. There's nothing to think about Srebrenica genocide or the war crimes that happened in Prijedor, in Podrinja, or the siege of Sarajevo. There's nothing to think about it. All of that has been proven. All of these crimes have been proven at the international courts and at the domestic court, even in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mind you, the court of Bosnia and Herzegovina is the most successful court in human history, national court, that prosecuted war criminals. So there has never been a court that prosecuted this many war criminals as what was the case with the Bosnian court. So it is extremely important always, and that's the only way to do it, is to fight it with facts. I do not argue with deniers, because the facts are there to prove it. There are hundreds of thousands of material evidence at courts that have been put in front of the courts. Testimonies of the survivors, of people who survived, of people who even survived mass shootings, of people who survived concentration camps. I have, like, a colleague of mine, friends of mine who I worked with within the initiative Jerme se tiče. Those are people who've been in 3 different concentration camps. Their family members were killed. So the best way is to share the testimonies of the survivors or families of victims, and to fight it with the judgments of the International Court of Domestic Court. We again really often fall in this trap of fighting disinformation and false information with and we are often led with emotions, which is natural. We are humans, but I believe we need to be led by reason and to use the facts, and that's the best way to fight it. For Bosnia and Herzegovina, it would be extremely important to have some sort of unique curriculum when it comes to war, not solely when it comes to war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but all around former Yugoslavia, because even though from my perspective, I've learned everything I know about Srebrenica genocide by myself. I didn't got the opportunity in school to learn about it. So I learned it by myself. That was my choice. And when it comes to everything else, that was also my choice. So we lack the discipline, we lack the system in order to put this. And we lack, of course, the system reacting when it comes to denialism. I really often get really offended when we have these political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina who say we need to punish deniers. They react to denialism that comes from Serbia, but they go and they form a coalition with people who deny it in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with political leaders who deny it almost on a daily basis. So I believe we first need to hold accountable ourselves, what we are to do, and then to call accountable other political leaders around the region and other systems as well.
How do you believe individuals worldwide can contribute effectively to the collective efforts of addressing the past and actively preventing the occurrence of future instances of genocide and war crimes?
This is a really tricky question, but it's up to us. Like on the day of a commemoration of Srebrenica genocide, I was part of a TV show. They were doing a special on Srebrenica Genocide Day. really prominent media outlet in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So together with me was speaking Alma Mustafić. She's a Bosnian, she's a survivor. Her father was killed in genocide, unfortunately. She is from Srebrenica, she was born and raised there, but she now lives in the Netherlands. And she's the one who managed to make system in the Netherlands educational system to put a curriculum on Srebrenica genocide in the curriculum, in the agenda. So now young people can learn from that. So I believe the best way is for us, the Bosnians, to take a reading role in this. We have many of great examples, such as Alma, many of great examples of young people and our magnificent young academics who write and research on these topics, who go around the world and spread the truth and share the knowledge. And we have great groups of young people and people from Bosnia and Herzegovina who are doing also educational activities and commemoration in all around the world when it comes to Srebrenica genocide, or when it comes to 1st of May, or different events. So I believe the best way for us is to take a reading role and to share this knowledge with people wherever we go. Once we share this knowledge with the foreigners, they become our ambassadors of truth. But unfortunately, even though I see in recent 2 years more and more efforts put in this, I believe we haven't done enough yet. So I believe that would be the best way. Really often, luckily now, young people from all around the world come to Srebrenica Memorial Center, for example. They visit to talk to people, they talk to customers, to survivors. So that's a great way of sharing the spreading the truth and preserving the knowledge and remembrance of the victims. And again, I believe it's always, whenever we have an opportunity to share, this is also one of the opportunities. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak about this topic and for you choosing to cover this topic. But it is extremely important, since only comparing with, I know that young people in Kosovo don't have enough knowledge on this topic, or people in general, but also vice versa, young people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, or people in Bosnia and Herzegovina that don't have enough knowledge on what happened in the late 90s in Kosovo. I also didn't know. I had to research about it. So, and we are like almost neighbors. We are neighboring countries. So we need to put a lot of efforts, especially ones who have these platforms, who have the visibility, who have this sort of power. We need to put efforts to share this truth, to invite people, to invite them to participate in commemoration, to participate in this event, to visit the memorial sites, and that's the best way. And again, I have to emphasize this, always to start, even when, if I'm a Bosnian, I'm not a survivor. I was born before the war, but I'm not a survivor. I was not born in the area where the war crimes happened. But if I'm speaking about this, I have to speak always having in mind survivors and victims. And whenever I have the chance to speak about these specific events or specific cases, I always try to start with the stories of survivors that I've got to learn about. And I believe that's the best way. And if we, of course, have a chance to give a place first for a survivor to speak about it, that's even better.
Thank you so much, Azra, for your time and for these great insights into this topic.
Thank you again for taking your time and putting efforts to speak about these topics, which are extremely important. Thank you.
I hope to speak to you again soon.